welcome Dr. M.G. Seduraman Sir, Professor, Department of Chemistry and Director R&D, Gandhigram Rural University, had his MSc and PhD from Regional Engineering College, Trichy. He has 30 years of teaching and 34 years of research experience. His area of specialization includes natural products chemistry and surface protection strategies. Professor Seduraman Sir has published 130 research articles in leading international journals with good impact factors, and his publications are widely cited. 18 scholars have been awarded for PhD under his guidance, and 66 scholars are presently working under his guidance. He has delivered more than 342 invited talks in various national and international conferences, both in India and abroad. Professor Seduraman Sir has completed 8 research projects. He has mobilized Rs 5.27 crores through projects. Besides, he is also the Associate Director of an Indo-US 21st Century Knowledge Initiative project of UGC, which is being executed in collaboration with University of North Florida, USA, with a financial outlay of Rs 1.25 crores. He has also served as a coordinator for Lemelson Recognition Mentoring Program, a project funded by the Lemelson Foundation USA and executed in collaboration with IIT Madras, Chennai. He is the recipient of Muscat National Award 2018 of the Electrochemical Society of India in recognition of the significant contribution made to the domain of corrosion science. Professor M.G. Seduraman Sir is associated with several Indian universities through membership in various academic bodies. He was the head of Department of Chemistry for 3 years and Director IQAC for 8 years. He also served as the member of Interim Administrative Committee, discharging the functions of Vice Chancellor during 2008 and 9. He has served as a resource person more than 40 NAC-sponsored national conferences and workshops. He has served as the overall coordinator for visit of UGC teams for the review of 11th and 12th 5-year plans at the Gandhigram Rural Institute. I would like to invite Professor M.G. Seduraman Sir to deliver the topic, Publish, Cherish and Flourish. And let me hand over the session to him. Sir, please.
Very good morning to all of you. I am extremely thankful to Professor Muthucherian Sir for giving me an opportunity to be part of this webinar. In fact, he has invited me to Bangalore because of the COVID and other reasons. I could not come over there. But this platform now is looking like an all India platform with so many participants from other states and other regions are here. So let me start my presentation. I'm going to talk on Publish, Flourish and Cherish. Now let me move on to my presentation. My topic of today's lecture is Publish, Flourish and Cherish. Now we all know that the concept of higher education is all about the production of qualified human resources. It also caters to the training need for the research career. And then it is also all about the efficient management of teaching profession, which has become very difficult now. And it also is about matter of extending career opportunities. Teaching, research and extension are the 3 dimensions of education. Now placement has become the 4th dimension of education. So matter of extending career opportunities has become the 4th dimension. Now, what are the functions of higher education? We'll have to prepare the students for research and teaching. We have to provide specialized training courses as per social and economic demands. We have to cater to the aspects of lifelong learning, to promote the international cooperation through internationalization of research, technology, and networking. So these are the functions of higher education. Now, if you look at the trends and the challenges of higher education, we all know that demand for higher education is expanding rapidly. Number of students who are entering into the portals of higher education institution is increasing enormously. 1. There is a phenomenal explosion of number of higher education institutions. If you take a walk in OMR Road in Chennai, there are more than 200 engineering colleges in a single road. To that extent, number of institutions has increased. By 2020, 40% of the global workforce are going to be knowledge workers. Okay, it is already 20 over. Now, quality is the biggest causality in the entire process. Despite the increase in number of higher education institutions, I do not know why we are not able to emphasize on quality at all. That is one. There are umpteen number of challenges. One of the main challenges is to make education accessible to as many people as possible. Then second, to ensure quality of education provided is worthwhile. That is second. Third, we have to provide education at a very affordable cost. So these are the challenges that we have before us. Now, higher education in India is passing through an unprecedented expansion. Number of volumes of students is increasing, number of institutions are increasing, and then the level of public funding is also increasing. Now, if you look at the challenges, the efforts taken has resulted in increase in the enrollment and reduction in the overall social disparities. Challenges remain in access to higher education, which is less than the minimum international threshold levels. International level is 42%. But our India level is only 29.5%. So we still have a long way to go. There are other challenges also. Distribution of institution is skewed. On one hand, you see concentration of the institutions in a square kilometer of 1 to 1.5 kilometer radius. But in somewhere else, for about 15 kilometers even, there is not even a single higher educational institutions in this country. Enrollment in public universities are concentrated in conventional disciplines. If you look at some of the universities, public universities, they are not really coming forward to start a new program in a challenging domain. But if you look at the private universities, whether they have the infrastructure or not, they dare to start or venture into such moves, which means they very boldly start the academic programs even in unconventional disciplines. Then enrollment in private self-financing institutions is mostly concentrated on market-driven discipline because vitamin M is a factor for them. So naturally, in only market-driven disciplines, they start their programs. Quality of education is always a problem. And of late, with the number of institutions increasing, it has become a headache for the bodies like UGC, AICT, etc., and for the governments also. And we need to also provide relevant education. We seem to ape ideas from the West. Unfortunately, we do not cater to the needs of this country or region or the state. So we need to provide the kind of education this country requires. Now, coming to the performance of the Indian institutions, higher education institutions at global level, there is no place in the top 100 institutions at the world level. India is at the Asian level, one of our institutions is securing 24th place. There is no top place in the top 25 B schools in the world. No very low ranking in the relative global scale. All this is a matter of concern. Now, if you look at the higher education institution ranking of 2017-18, the Indian Institute of Science, which is supposed to be the number one institution, comes in the band 251 to 300. IIT Mumbai, which is doing very well in your NIR ranking, is 351 to 400. IIT Delhi, 501 to 600. And IIT Madras, which is NIR of number 1, I don't find anything within 600, which means we lag much behind. Why is it so? Now, if you look at the QS ranking also, if you look at the various IITs, where are they? They are in 174th rank, 264 rank, 283, 472, 381, like that. Even the University of Delhi, which is supposed to be one of the best institutions, is having 487th rank, with IAAC having what? 117th rank. So that is the kind of scenario that you have. Now let me come to my point. Publish, flourish and cherish. Madam was talking earlier about research. Let me just touch what exactly is research. Research, as you all know, it is a voyage to discovery. It is an art of scientific investigation. It is a systemized effort for gaining new knowledge. It is caused by instinct of inquisitiveness. We may have to gain fresh insight. We will get answered for all our queries, and we have to acquire knowledge. Why should you embark on research? You may ask me. Majority of our institutions, higher education institutions, are teaching-based institutions. Research is given little priority. Only in universities and some of the national institutions, research is given prominence. Please remember one thing. Teaching without research is like food without salt. You may say that it is good for a blood pressure patient, but it is not so. So research increases your intellectual esteem. It gives you enough courage to face challenges. It increases the standard of living. It validates all your beliefs and practices. It claims respectability. It solves a problem. You are able to serve the society. You are able to show the right path to the community. Above all, you are able to acquire a degree through your research, your PhD. But of late, your PhD is diluted. That is what the funding agencies are also worried about. People, senior academicians like Muthucherian, Professor Muthucherian, if you ask, he'll say that the PhD is very much diluted. PhD has become please have degree program. That is the kind of expansion people are giving. Now, what are the generic steps in research? I will just skip the slide because you already know the various steps that are involved in research. There are different types of research. Some of the research can either be descriptive or analytical. It can be fundamental or applied. It can be quantitative or qualitative. It can be on the basis of a concept or an empirical idea. It can be formulated or exploratory. It can be laboratory oriented or field based. It can be clinical or diagnostical. So there are different types of research. What it takes you to do for research? One is creativity. You need to have originality, creativity. So that kind of creativity, inquisitiveness should be there. Open mind is there. You should not really be closed, having a closed mind. You should not be expect result immediately. So you should be all possible types of results you may get. So you should have an open mind. There should be curiosity. Patience should be there. Unfortunately, the present day, students who come for research do not have patience. They want 2-minute Maggi noodles. So result to come just like that. So that should not really be taking place. You should have patience. Persistence should be there because reproducibility and repeatability are the hallmarks of the research. So we should be able to persistently perform. Then positive attitude you must have. Discipline, focus should be there. So all that is the need of the hour. Now, the nature of creativity, the ability of making something new should be there. Please remember one thing. There are 3 mandates of higher education: knowledge dissemination, knowledge updation, knowledge creation. So you should be able to create new knowledge. The ability of making something new should be there in you. You should have originality, and that should have some utility to the society or to the industry or to the general mankind. So that is the creativity instinct that you must have in you. Fine. Now, what is that? What does NAAC say about the research metrics with regard to publications? Let me move. Suppose if you go to the criteria 3, under 3.4.5, there are questions like this. Number of research papers per teacher in the journals notified on UGC website during the last 5 years from your institution. 20 marks for that. Number of books and chapters in edited volumes, book published, and papers in conference proceedings per teacher during the last 5 years. Bibliometrics of the publications during the last 5 years. Bibliometrics of the publication in the last 3 years. Your Web of Science H index of the institution, university or college. So that is the kind of questions they are asking. Look at. So number of research paper published, number of books and chapters, and then again bibliometrics. Now people have started asking number of papers published per teacher. That is the latest thing. Number of publications per teacher per year. So you should be really careful. Even in the NIRF, if you look at the parameter under the research and professional practice, combined metric for publication is 30%. Combined metric for quality publication is 40%. IPR, your footprint of the project's professional practice and executive development program, 15%. This is the kind of weightage they are giving. So there is an emphasis on the metrics for publication, combined metric for the quality publications, all that. So it is not enough if you have publication, you should also have a quality publication. If you go to QS World Ranking, look at the way, powered by Scopus, they are asking for the citations per faculty. There, they are asking for the quality output of your publications. So the weightage given is 20% for the citation per faculty. Under the QS Asian University Ranking methodology, if you look at, again, 10% papers per faculty, research publications per faculty, and 10% weightage for citations per paper. That is the kind of impact that it has. Then again, QS BRICS University Ranking, if you look at 10% of the weightage is for papers per faculty and 5% is for citations per paper. So that is the kind of emphasis they are giving for the quality of the publication. Now, if you look at the share of the countries in major R&D global investments, the United States is investing about 2.5%. Japan 3.5% nearly. It has gone up to 4.2 now, I was told. Israel is number one. It is about 5.8% now. India is 0.8. Now it has gone up to 1.2%. So that is actually our share of the, our country in the major R&D global investments. Now, if you look at the world of, world publication of selected countries, United States, if that is actually 1 crore 10 lakh, so many documents. And India is actually for what? 1 crore 47,000 and 47 lakhs something. So that means there is about 12 times more than what we have. United States is actually performing. Now, if you look at the citation per document, United States is 24.25, whereas for India it is 8.58. Now, this table speaks about the contribution of India to the arena of publications. We are lagging far behind. We are coming only in the 9th place. Now, if you look at the increase that we have registered in the last 10 years, in 2006, the world share, if you look at, USA was dominating, 25% nearly they had. It has come down to 17.8%. Now, if you look at the Europe, okay, it is 30.7. Okay, and if it is Japan, it is 4.2. That is what they say. And please, I'm in a seminar. I'll call you later. Now, if you look at the China, it is 18.6, and then it was 12.1. It has now moved over to 18.6. And if you look at India, now it was actually 2.5. It has now gone up to 4.8. And then other developing countries also, like from 10.3, we are actually moved over to 16.3. Now, scientific publication is a team effort. It is actually a combined work of author, reviewer, etc. Now, publication and peer review are the major steps. Okay. Now, we should first of all decide what to publish, whether to publish it as an abstract or a full paper. That is, whether you publish it as a note or actually a short, paper and all that. The other one is actually, 1 minute. Hello, I'm in a seminar. You call me later. Okay, I'm a seminar looking. Now, second is choosing your forum. Which type of journal is best for you? What audience are you targeting? Then research journal. We'll have to, go into the publication guidelines of it. We'll also debate on the article, style. What kind, whether you want to, communicate as a short communication or as a full paper, all that, or a review article, everything. Now, publish or perish was a slogan of yesterday. Now, publish, flourish, and cherish has become the slogan of today. Now, if you look at the NAC or other agencies, they are asking for Scopus Index publication or a Web of Science Index publication. So, Scopus, in fact, integrates broad and deep coverage of quality peer-reviewed literature and web resources across various domains such as science, technology, health, social sciences, and humanities. If you look at the health sciences, there are it covers about 7,500 titles. Scopus covers around 8,100 titles belonging to physical sciences. People often belonging to social science complain that they are not able to publish any of their articles in journals. They concentrate only on book publications. But to our surprise, if you look at the number of titles your Scopus covers in the arena of social sciences, it is 9,692. And again, from the life sciences side, we have nearly 5,000 titles. Now, what is actually about Web of Science, Web of Science group? Now, there are 254 subject categories in Web of Science, and it covers about 34,200 journals across the platform, and core collection is about 21,000. And if you look at the record patents, data sets, articles, and proceedings that they have, it is about 155 million. And the cited references are 1.6 billion. Records with funding data, they have to the extent of 11.2 million. And if you look at the number of patents information that they have, it is about 80 million. Okay. So, and back files up to the 1900 they have. That is the kind of comprehensive content Web of Science has. So Web of Science and your Scopus are the ultimate, and see that your article are indexed by these two. Fine. Of late, UGC is seized of the problem with regard to predatory journals and all that. So people have slowly started, emphasizing on the need to, publish in UGC CARE list. The CARE expansion for this is Consortium for Academic Research and Ethics. Consortium for Academic Research and Ethics. That is your CARE. Now, this UGC approved list of journal is now replaced by this UGC CARE list. Fine. What does this UGC CARE list have? You have UGC approved list of journals. Scopus is there. Madam was telling about Clarivate Analytics. Then the Web of Science, about 14,449 journals from Web of Science are included in the UGC CARE list. Scopus, from Scopus, 39,000, 111 are there. From the existing UGC approved list, they are having 521 journals. And from the various councils, 47 journals are included. And from CARE universities and CEL in Pune has recommended 247 journals to be included in the CARE list. And totally, we have about 54,375 journals in the UGC CARE list. And many of us still complain that the publication in which we have, the journal in which we have published is not listed on the UGC CARE at all. I do not know how long the list is going to be in the coming years, because they go on including all the journals one after the other in the main list. Of course, there are quality parameters of a journal. People have slowly started emphasizing on quality. As a result of which, now we have started hearing about impact factor, IGEN factor, then site score, SJR, SNP rating, etc. Now, what exactly is your impact factor? Now, impact factor was introduced by Eugene L. Garfield, the founder of the Institute for Scientific Information. If you look at Garfield's words, he says that impact simply reflects the ability of the journals and editors to attract the best paper available. There is so much of criticism about the impact factor. If you ask some of the recent articles of top giants about this impact factor fiasco, you will know. But still, impact factor is one which is actually followed worldwide. So before you start publishing your paper in journals, look into its impact factor and then decide on the publication. Now, the impact factor can be calculated for a particular journal only after completing minimum of 3 years of publication. Impact factors are calculated by Thomson Reuters Corporation for these journals that it indexes and are published in JCR, that is Journal Citation Report. Now, based on the Web of Science data, this metric is updated once a year and is traditionally released in June. So last month we had the latest impact factor list of journals is actually released. Now, if you look at the definition for impact factor, it is the average number of times articles from a particular journal is published in the past 2 years have been cited in the current year. Let me tell an example. I am taking a case of 2006. Try to find out how many articles, how many articles published in 2004 and 5 are cited. So citations in 2004-5 by total number of publications in 2004 and 5. I'll just tell you, I'll make it a little clear, then you will get to know. See, for example, in Nature, if you look at, it has an impact factor of 41.57. It is in 2017. It has slightly gone up now. Now, if you look at the citations of this particular journal in 2016 and 15, the previous 2 years, add that divided by the total number of publications of 2015 and 16. That is actually your impact factor. This is how it is actually calculated. Let me repeat again. Citations for the previous years, 15 and 16, divided by the total number of publications will be the impact factor. Now, this is the impact. See, what does it actually mean? 41.577 is the impact factor for Nature. This means that on an average, this journal receives about 42 citations. So on an average, the papers of Nature published in 2015 and 16 received roughly 42 citations each in 2017. That is actually the impact factor 2017 for your Nature. So impact factors are reported, for 2018, only after all the 2017 art publications have been processed by the indexing agency, namely Thomson Reuters. Before that, they don't release at all. So this is the kind of thing that we have to bear in mind with regard to impact factor. Now, there is another factor called hygiene factor, a rating of the total importance of a scientific journal according to the number of incoming citations. That is actually called hygiene factor. People not really very much aware of it. It is a rating of the total importance of a scientific journal according to the number of incoming citations. Highly ranked journals are weighted to make a larger contribution to the hygiene factor than those from a poorly ranked journal. Now, coming to this, another metric we have is site score. Now, this site score is actually a measure of reflecting the yearly average number of citations to recent articles published in that journal. For example, you are taking the case of a site score of a particular journal in 2018. You collect the documents from 2015, 16, and 18. So add all these citations divided by the number of publications you have. Then you will have the site score. So I have just given you the site score for 2017. The previous 3 years, 14, 15, and 16, divided by the articles published in 14, 15, and 16. So that is actually your site score. So this is how site score is actually calculated. Then the next one is, Scimago journal rank. This is another metric for deciding about the quality of the journal. It is actually a measure of the scientific influence of the scholarly journals that accounts for both the number of citations received by the journal and the importance of the prestige of journals where such citations in fact come from. Now, if you look at the various SJR ranking of various journals, I think I had a list. I do not know whether the PowerPoint is clear. I have given you the SJR ranking in the case of a particular Journal of Applied Physics. Okay, for total sites and self sites and all that, for the ranking, it actually, if you look at the y-axis, it is 0 to 2.4, it is given, and from 1990 to 2012, it is not very clear. Even I am struggling to read. So that is actually the graph that you see. So this is your Scimago journal ranking. And then source normalized impact for paper. It measures contextual citation impact by weighting citations based on the total number of citations in the subject field. Now this is again, they calculated like this. The impact of a single citation is calculated on the basis of journal citation count per paper divided by the citation potential in its subject field. Of course, for a common researcher, he doesn't give much of weightage for all the SNP and all that. He stops only with the impact factor. He doesn't even go into this SNP details of the journal. It is source normalized impact per paper. That is actually the calculation is the source normalized impact factor is RIP. It is not rest in peace. It is actually raw impact per paper divided by the citation potential divided by the median database citation potential. Now, you may ask me, should we calculate all this? It is all calculated by the centralized agencies, like your Web of Science and all that. It is put. Madam was talking about Nature Index and all that. If you look at the journals, the actual homepage itself gives data about the impact factor and all that. SNP rating, SCImago rating, everything it is actually given in the homepage of the journal itself. Only please check whether it is actually as per the Web of Science data, as per your Thomson Reuters classification, because many journals have their own impact factor or impact like factor and all that put on their homepage. So we have to be a little careful about that. Now, another thing is, I'll just talk about some of the social science journal, American Economic Journal. If you look at the site score of that, it is 6.16. The SJR rating is 11.559. The SNP rating is 3.721 for this. Look at the way how this, various journals, for example, your molecular, cell or journal of, electron materials and all that, then mathematics research letters, all that, how exactly the SNP factors and the SJR ratings and the other, metrics are actually varying. You can see that there is a tabulation given. This data I have taken from the American Society for Information Science and Technology. So for various journals like this, you can have how it is calculated, everything is given. Now, coming to the individual researcher. As a researcher, what should we be worried about? We should be worried about what is our H index. How many times our articles are actually cited? That is number of citations. What is our I10 index? These are the three things which we should be worried about. Now, we should also, there is another G index which is less used. Okay, a little cumbersome also to calculate. Now, what is actually the citation? A citation is a formal reference to a published or unpublished source that you consulted and obtained information. Now, what is a source in which your papers are cited? Yes, your paper or your work may be cited in a book or a book chapter, or a journal might have cited your work. It might have been cited by a newspaper or a website, or in a play of drama from literature, or poem, or in an interview. So the source actually includes all this. So your book or book chapter, journal, newspaper, website, play of drama from literature, a poem, interview, all that is there. Then this is about my paper, published very recently in American Society Journal. If you look at, I'll tell you, this is, you can see the publications, cited 4, 5, then 6, and 7 to 12 and all that. And if you look at the, citations, some of them are actually self-cited also. For example, I'll quote here, your 14th reference, which I have cited in my, paper, it's a self-cited. So citation can either be self-citation or cited by others. So people distinguish self-citation from citation from others also. Now, there is another parameter apart from your citation index, which is actually being used. That is your H index. The H index is actually the short form for the Hirsch index. That is introduced by a scientist by name George Hirsch. Now, it is actually the quantification of the productivity and impact of an individual author. So, if I say that my H index is 32, 32 of my articles are cited 32 times in scientific journals. That is actually the H index. Now, I'll just try to tell you a research. Suppose if you take the case of Professor Muthuserian, suppose if he has a H index of 42. I do not know, it must be more than that also, which means that 42 of his papers are cited 42 times. A researcher with a H index of 6 indicates that the researcher has published at least 6 papers with at least 6 citations. Now, I'll give you an illustration here. There is a researcher First article of his has been cited 33 times. Second article is cited 30 times. Third article is cited 20 times. Fourth article 15 times. So the H index is 6. So it may be more than that. So the least times. So at least 6 of his articles are actually cited 6 times. That is why his H index is 6. Now, another case study here. Now you look at this. 2019, I have published one article which carries 76 citation. 2010, I have published that is having 63 publications. Then 11, 58 citations are there. My fourth article in 2012 carries 43 citations. Fifth article carries 25 citations. Sixth article carries 12 citations. And the seventh article contains 10 publications. And eighth article contains 8 publications. My H index is only 8. Though one of my articles has got 76. So the minimum is actually 8. So H index of this particular author is only 8. So that is how it is actually calculated. Now look at this. Another one. Paper 1 is cited 101 times. Paper 2 is cited 86 times. Paper 3 is cited 76 times. Now, if you look at this article, if you consider 7 papers, okay, 7 of his papers are cited 7 times. So that means his H index is only 7. So his minimum number of citations will be 8. But suppose if his 8th paper has been cited 8 times, then his H index would have been 8. But unfortunately, it is only 7. So we should be really knowing how to calculate our H index. Then there is another parameter which is actually introduced by Google. This was introduced very recently in 2011. It is called I10 index. So this I10 index refers to the number of publications with at least 10 or more citations. Okay, so such of those publications which carry more than 10 citations are covered by this I10 index. Now, I'll tell you this. If you look at the publications of a particular researcher, first publication has been cited 128, second 76, third 48. Look at this. Sixth paper has been cited 10 times. So his I10 index is what? It is only 6. It cannot be 7 because 7th paper is only cited 8 times. So I10 index is only 6. So this is how your I10 index is actually calculated. So as I said, the I10 index is actually the measure of, it is the number of publications with at least 10 or more citations. That is your I10 index. Then I10 index of another case study. Look at this. See, only his 9th article carries 10. The 10th article has got only 5 publications. So I10 index of this particular research is only 9. So this is how it is actually calculated. The next one is G index. G index is actually suggested in 2006 by another scientist by Leo G. So it is an index for quantifying scientific productivity based on the public record or publication record. So the G index gives more weightage to highly cited articles. Now look at this. See, a number of publications of the first article, okay, it carries about 128 citations. Second publication, 76. Third publication, 53. Fourth is 20. Fifth is 11. So if you look at the fourth one, 4 square is actually 16. So that means G index is only 4. So G index of 4 means that the academic has published at least 4 articles that combined have received at least 16 citations. Suppose if the 5th article, let us say that it is instead of 11, suppose if you have about 28. The 4th article is about 32 or 38. 5th article is about 28. Then you can say that his G index is actually 5. So you can calculate the G index like this. So to calculate the G index, it is so you from a given set of articles, You rank it in the decreasing order of the number of citations that they receive. G index is the unique largest number such that the top G articles received at least G squared citations. Okay, I'll give you an example for this. See, I'm giving this thing, citations 15, first article, second article 10, third article 7, fourth article 4. Now, can you tell me what exactly is the G index? Sixth article in this case is actually 36 into 36. So 6. So X is equal to what? 6 here. The G index of this particular author is actually 6. That means this academician has published at least 6 articles that combined have received at least 36 citations. This is how G index is actually calculated. Now, there are certain interesting facts. I'll give you a particular paper. A physical review paper published in 2015 is a paper which is authored by 5,154 authors. Yes, what? Yes, township has what? Worked and submitted a paper. We have heard of 2 authors publishing a paper, 5 authors publishing a paper. Here is a paper which has actually worked on the mass of the Higgs boson. Okay, this paper has appeared in Physical Review Letters. This is a paper which has got the highest number of contributors, namely 5,154 authors for a single research article. This article is the first joint paper from the 2 teams. One is actually Atlas, the other one is CMS. Atlas is a toroidal LHC apparatus, and CMS is actually a compact muon solenoid. 2 massive detectors at the Large Hadron Collider, Europe's particle physics lab near Geneva. They have come out this. So this particular Physical Review Letter, authored by 5,154 authors, is the paper which has maximum number of authors. Now, this a search of the Elsevier Scopus database. If you look at, there are interesting things. From the field of chemistry, material science, and chemical engineering, a total of 331 papers have been retracted during the 2 years, 2017 and 2018. After publishing the article in the journal, from the Elsevier site, if you look at, 331 research articles have been retracted. They have withdrawn. Now, of course, you may argue, if you look at the number of publications they have, it is 11,14,476 papers have been published. Okay. But if you look at the number of papers that have been retracted, is only 331. But still, look at the agony of the author. If his paper is retracted, it's a shame on him. So 3 papers are retracted for every 10,000 papers published in Elsevier. That is the latest calculation. So on an average, 3 papers were retracted out of 10,000 papers published in Elsevier. Now, if you look at the statistics, that 17% of this 331 retracted papers in chemistry and material science domain are from India. Now, we say that we need to improve about the quality of research articles and all that. The fact is, 17% of the 331 papers which are retracted from Elsevier in 2017 and 18 were from India. The published papers stood at around 7% of the total. Now, if you look at again another statistics, from which of the countries the retraction rate is there? The percentage retraction is more in China. Next comes India. Then only you have USA. Then comes your Iran. Then comes South Korea, Japan, Germany, and all that. If you look at the Russian papers, it is much less. Even Pakistan, it is much less. Even number of papers published from Pakistan is much less. That's a different thing. But still, I would just say that the geographic distribution of the retracted papers keeps India in the second position. Number of papers retracted for various reasons is a high from India, next only to China. And the geographic distribution, again, in the area of material science, if you look at, again, we are look at the fraction of distraction. It is more from India. Of course, we are beaten by Iran in that respect. You look at the, on the y-axis, you have fraction of retractions. That is actually per 1,000 papers. How many papers are retracted? So compared to the total number of publications, the number of papers retracted from Iran is more. Next is actually Taiwan, and then we have India. So that is our position. Now, why is these published papers are retracted? You may ask me. There are several issues associated with this. See, the reasons could be due to lack of authorization, due to plagiarism, even due to self-plagiarism, then duplicate publication, then data ownership and disclosure, falsified data, then problematic data. There may be other reasons also. Now, I'll come to that. I'm in a webinar. I'll call you, sir. I'll call you. Now, this is the number of retracted papers you have. So, for various reasons, our papers are actually retracted. Now, this is one of the papers from an Indian scientist which has been retracted recently from Elsevier. Similarly, you have from in the domain of biology and in the domain of pharmacology, you have some of these papers retracted. Then even from the Journal of Material Science, it is very clearly mentioned that the paper is actually retracted. It is actually a Chinese paper. Now, what I'm trying to say is we should be really careful with the publication. If our paper is retracted for some reason, either due to plagiarism or for other issues, it is a really shame on us. So we'll have to be really worried about the quality aspects of our publications. So when you send an article for journal, check for plagiarism, check for all other issues, then what? Make up your mind and then publish. Let us be concentrating on that. Now, so one of the topmost scientists of this country also faced an agony when somebody pointed that his articles also were plagiarized. So, like they had taken just like that from other articles or his own articles, and they have done it. So, we should be really careful about these kind of things. Another thing that we should really be worried about is the identification of predatory journals. We should be able to identify predatory journals. Now, say no to predatory journals. That campaign is really getting momentum. Why should we not publish in predatory journals, you may ask? Now, how to identify these predatory journals, first of all? Now, if you look at these journals, no single individual is identified as journal's editor. There will not be any formal review board or an editorial board. If you go to the website, such details will not be there at all. And the website of the journal also will be hiding information about the author fees, about the others, offering to the publishing author's paper, and later on sending an unanticipated surprise invoice. All that will be there. So there will be unethical process. Initially, they will not say that we are going to publish it for money. After accepting, at the time of publication, they'll send an invoice saying that you may have to publish, give 15,000 rupees and all that. There will not be any proper indexing at all. Such journals will not, the articles in such journals will not get indexed in Scopus or Web of Science or Indian Citation Index or any such indexing network at all. The name of the journal is unrelated with the journal's mission. For example, there will be a thing, American Journal of Social Science. I found a particular, domain which is not connected with the domain of the journal is published in that. For example, Journal of Molecular Liquids. You are finding a phytochemistry paper in Journal of Molecular Liquids. Why should you publish a paper on phytochemistry in Molecular Journal Liquids journal? Journal? We don't really know. So it is totally unrelated journal. And that, I'm not questioning the authenticity of the, Journal of Molecular Liquids. That's a very reputed journal. To just quote an example, I'm saying. So let us be very, very careful. Even by mistake, if they accept, we should not really find pleasure in publishing our papers in unrelated journals. Then publisher has poorly maintained website, including there will be dead links, prominent misspellings will be there, grammatical errors will be on the mistake on the website itself. So it will speak badly about the institution and about the journal. So please do not publish your articles in such predatory journals. Then publisher will make unauthorized use of licensed image on their website taken from the open web without permission or licensing from the copyright owner. Now they'll take, suppose if it is Elsevier, they will change this, spelling of Elsevier slightly and make it appear as though it is an Elsevier journal. They will republish papers which are already published in other journals. They will use boastful language claiming to be a leading publisher, though the publisher may only be a startup or a novice organization. They will provide minimal or no copy editing or proofreading of submissions. They will publish papers that are not academic at all, essays by lay people, then like pseudoscience, all that will be there. So we have to be extremely careful in sending our papers for journals. Look at the credibility of the journals, whether they are indexed properly. Are they SCI indexed journals? Or it is in the Scopus index journals or Web of Science index journals. Look for that kind of journals. So it is not enough to have your paper published. It is all the more important to see that your papers are published in worthy journals. Again, if you go into the contact us page, that will include a web form or an email address, and the publisher will hide or he will not release his location or identity at all. Publisher will publish journals that are excessively broad, combining two or more fields, not normally treated together, criminology and agriculture engineering. There is no connection, but the journal will invite articles from both criminology as well as from agriculture engineering. Then business, humanities and technology, in order to attract more articles and gain more revenue from author fees. So it is only commercial. From the point of view of money, they do all this kind of jugglery. So one should not fall prey to such things. Now you may ask me, what are the deadly sins? The 7 deadly sins with regard to publication are: one is data manipulation. Don't ever try to manipulate your data. Then falsification of data is another thing. Duplicate manuscript. Don't try to copy it, because cut and paste has become the philosophy of research of late, at least to a few. So let us not duplicate somebody else. Why should you father somebody else's child? So do not try to copy. So copy and paste has become many theses which are coming for evaluation. If you look at the plagiarism things, you are able to see that they happily copy it from previous thesis or from some others. So they submit the duplicate manuscript. Then redundant publication, already published matter, they publish again. Plagiarism, they just take phrases, sentences, paragraphs, pages from already published material. Then author conflicts of interest. You would have peer reviewed an article. The article would have come to you as a reviewer. They would have been, the articles would have been sent to you for reviewing purpose. What do? Unethically, you lift the findings and then put it in your article. Then it is a conflict of interest. Then animal use consents. Please see that ICMR, DBT and all that, they have their own regulations with regard to the animal use. You must have animal ethics committee and all that. Ethical clearance should be there. Adhere to all such norms. Do not violate human use concerns. Again, you should have an ethical committee, and the subjects whom you are selecting, they should be given material in vernacular language. Consent form should be signed, and it should be actually placed before the ethical committee. So these are the 7 deadly sins with regard to the publication. Carefully see all these 7 points and see that you don't repeat. Fine. What is scientific misconduct? Gift authorship. There is a kind of syndicate which is actually going on. I scratch your back, you scratch my bag. That means what? I'll give authorship to your group, and your group should give authorship to my group. So this kind of gifting the authorship is also a scientific misconduct. Please do not do that. Second is redundant publication. Published material, change the title alone and then publish it. Plagiarism, fabrication of the data, falsification, conflict of interest, all these are scientific misconduct. Please do not do all this. Then you may ask me, what exactly is plagiarism? Plagiarism means kidnapping. It is an intellectual theft. It is a serious scientific misconduct. UGC has come out with the plagiarism rules. We are supposed to have a plagiarism software also installed in our institution or in the university. For every thesis coming out of our institution, we should have the plagiarism report attached along with the thesis. Now, there is what is known as cyber plagiarism also, copying the text or material from the web without proper accreditation. There is also known as digital plagiarism. That is actually a term used to describe copying using computers. Suppose if you are doing something on bioimaging, take the bioimage of already published article and put it in your result. That can also be found out. I still remember Professor Muthucherian displaying such digital plagiarism thefts during his lecture at Gandhigram Rural Institute. So digital plagiarism is one which is to be avoided. Then there are different types of plagiarism: word for word, mosaic, paraphrase. People steal ideas, they give authorship. Secondary sources they just take without quoting it. Self-plagiarism. Now, two types of plagiarism are not seen. One is intentional, other one is unintentional. Intentional is you copy a friend's work or foe's work. Buying or borrowing papers for money. Cutting and pasting blocks of text from other sources. Then borrowing without any documentation. That is actually intentional way of stealing. Unintentional way is careless paraphrasing, poor documentation, failures to use your own voice. Okay, that is unintentional. Sometimes it may happen also. You may be a research guide, you would have asked your student to do it. Unintentionally, he would have picked up, and by mistake also you would have done it. But you should be very careful. If the text goes with your name, you cannot escape saying that I am only a guide. I am not really aware of all that. These days, we have to be doubly careful with such things. The kind of penalty they have prescribed by UGC, I am not going to deal with that. But still, we should be little careful with all such things. Then why do people plagiarize? You may ask me. Out of ignorance. People think that we will not get caught at all. That is one thing. Second is lack of knowledge on the ethics of scholarly writing or poor writing skills. Now, even in the case of assignment, when you give it to an undergraduate student, only one boy writes as assignment, all others copy it. So what do? They do not really know the ethics. They simply copy it. Lack of knowledge on the ethics of scholarly writing or poor writing skills. Suppose if I am not good at writing in English, what do? I ask somebody else to write it for me. That man coolly steals data or the paragraphs from other papers. Then ambition. Now people there is a rat race outside. I want to just make a fast buck. I want to climb the ladder at a much faster rate. As a result of which, what do? I involve myself in shortcuts. Then there is pressure from seniors. Okay, see, like I am a senior, after I joined within 3 years, I could have 8 publications. You have shown only 2 publications. That time we didn't even have facility. Now you have all facilities, but still your publication is much less. So that gives a kind of peer pressure. And that really makes the fellow resort to such things, unethical things. Then publish or perish system. Now your PBAA system and all that, UGC also says that you should have publication, 15 marks for that, 10 marks for this and all that. So the man is under tension. When he wants to move from a senior to great associate professor or associate professor to professor and all that, they say that you should have published some 10 articles and all that. So this prescription really puts him into turmoil, as a result of which he wants to make a fast buck. So he involves himself in unethical practice faster. Chances of getting caught or action being taken is very slim. So what happened for this kind of offense? That man did not get caught at all. So he escaped. Like him, I can also do it. So people do it. I have this kind of background. So I can easily come out even if I am charged. So people do with all these kind of intentions. Please remember one thing, let us not resort to these kind of unethical practices. We may probably delay it by another 1 year or 2 years. We may take longer duration to have a publication achieved, but still that is far better than getting caught. So let us not do ourselves. Let us not be little careless. Now again, totally, if you are a research guide, do not totally depend on the students. Many times, students do not know the seriousness of this kind of offense. So as a result of which, when the paper goes along with your name as a guide, now people do not really take it lightly. They only start blaming us. So we should be really very, very careful about it. And how to avoid plagiarism? Now for short quotes, I would say that use quotation marks in the sentence. For longer quotes, indent the entire paragraph. If you used a table or a chart or a diagram, cite the source directly below the statement itself. That permission has been obtained. To say that all sources should be disclosed. And if large amounts of other people's written or in illustrative material is to be used, you have to get the permission. Permission has to be sought from them. So let us avoid plagiarism. Let us not copy text or tables or diagrams from some other source just like that without acknowledging their contribution. We should be really very, very, very careful. Now, let me see, even if you change a few words here and there, it is considered plagiarism. People think that they are very clever. They change a few words here and there, and then what? Publish it. Even that is actually considered as a plagiarism. Now, let us come to this kind of conclusion. As I told you some time back, publish or perish was a slogan of yesterday. Now, with so many journals, with so many search engines and all that, it has become a very common thing. So high quality research is an objective journey towards excellence, towards quality assurance, and towards quality sustenance. Research is given prominence. Even in accreditation, if you are from a university, the weightage that is given for research is much higher. If you are from autonomous college, again, the weightage that is given for research is much higher. So we need to have what? A higher quality research in our institutions. If your institution is a research-based institution, if it is actually an approved research center of a university, you should be all the more careful. If you are guiding a PhD student or a PhD scholar or an MPhil scholar, let us be doubly careful before we give them a green signal for publication or presentation. Let us be really careful. Gone are the days where only a few in the department were identified and nurtured as researchers. Now NAAC is asking for number of publications per teacher per year, which means every faculty in a higher education institution is supposed to embark on research, is supposed to undertake research. So when I say research, I mean only high quality research. So let us really involve ourselves in high quality research so that we are able to come out with a good, high impactful paper so that we are able to contribute to the knowledge domain. Please remember one thing, observe your world, come up with a question to answer using scientific methods. When we go for a PhD Viva, these days not many questions are asked in PhD Viva also, we know for obvious reasons. And the first questions which usually people like me ask is, what is the contribution to the knowledge domain? Many scholars are not able to say. Through this work, what is the contribution that you have made to the knowledge domain? If you ask, many are not able to say because people think that they should not walk an extra mile. People are not able to summarize their work. People are not able to actually present their work in a nutshell. People are not able to write effectively a paper. And please remember, a quality publication only speaks about the caliber of the researcher. So if you want to be identified as a good researcher, you should have higher H index. you should make your contributions in high impact factor journals. So look for quality research, publish in high impact factor journals so that your papers are widely cited, so that your H index also goes up. So finally, so this is what I just would like to tell you. So quality research, quality teaching, quality extension are the hallmarks of a good academic institution. Let us have good research practices in our campus. Please remember one thing: if India has to develop, if India has to become a knowledge superpower, as envisioned by people like Dr. Abdul Kalam, it can be achieved only through development. The development can be achieved only through research. So where R&D is strong, where innovation is taking place, development will also take place. Let us all join together, see that good quality research comes out of this country, so that we are able to see a sea of change in our attitude, in our output, in our all our routine activities, so that this developed nation comes out as a developed nation. So quality research, innovative research is the need of the hour. Let us plunge ourselves for this. So please do not neglect research. It should be part and parcel of our professional life. So give equal importance to research also. So with these few words, let me thank the organizers for this. My contact details, I think you can have it from the website also. So this is what I just would like to tell you.